Why was everyone laughing at her, when all she'd done was stand at attention? The desert heat pressed down like a hammer on steel, baking the training range into a shimmering blur. 20 recruits stood in line, sweat stinging their eyes, boots sinking into the dusty earth. But all eyes weren't on the targets downrange. They were on her, the only woman here. She didn't flinch when the whispers started again, didn't show the sting when Sergeant smirked and muttered about the mess hall needing extra hands, didn't even react when one of the recruits chuckled loud enough for her to hear. That was the trick. Never let them see the wound, because weakness, even imagined weakness, would spread like blood in water. The command broke across the field. Attention on deck. Captain strode forward like a storm contained in one man. 6 feet of intimidation, chest lined with combat ribbons that weren't just earned, they were worn like scars. His face was carved in stone, his eyes cold, calculating. He stopped in front of her. Front and center. Sam moved without hesitation. Back straight, shoulders squared, eyes fixed 6 inches above his head as regulation demanded. She didn't breathe faster, didn't let the pounding of her heart betray itself. You think you belong here. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Every recruit heard it, and every one of them leaned in just a little, waiting for her to crack. Yes, sir, her tone didn't waver. That rifle weighs almost as much as you do, circled her, eyes sharp as razors. He was looking for weakness, for the slightest tremor in her stance, something to prove what he already believed. Several recruits snickered, one even muttered under his breath, but she didn't twitch. On paper, maybe you belong, pressed, now right at her shoulder. But paper doesn't pull a trigger in a combat zone. Paper doesn't carry a wounded Marine out of hostile territory. His words hung like a knife pressed to the skin. Sir, I am qualified to be here, she replied, voice level. Something flickered in his eyes. Maybe irritation, maybe disappointment he wasn't done. Final test is in 3 weeks, a 3,100-meter shot, wind unpredictable, fail and you're out, forever. A low whistle cut through the ranks. Everyone knew what that distance meant. It wasn't just far, it was bordering on impossible. And then smiled, the kind of smile that wasn't really a smile at all. And we'll demonstrate first. Let's see what women are made of. The laughter came again, louder this time. She didn't look at any of them, she just locked her jaw and stood her ground. Later that evening, when the barracks emptied out and the echoes of laughter were gone, Sam sat alone with her rifle, methodical, deliberate. Every part dismantled, cleaned, inspected, reassembled. It wasn't ritual, it was survival. Jason Reed, one of the only recruits who treated her like an equal, dropped down beside her. Don't let them get to you, he said softly. They already underestimate me. She didn't look up. That's their mistake, not mine. But before Jason could reply, Tanner, 6'2" of arrogance and legacy, 3rd-generation Marine, sauntered over. His shadow fell over her weapon. Playing with guns, cute. He leaned against her locker like he owned it. Bet you can't even field strip that in under a minute. Sam didn't look at him. She didn't need to. Her hands kept moving, smooth, precise. Don't need to prove anything to you, Tanner. That's your problem. His smirk hardened into a sneer. You don't belong here. This isn't an equal opportunity program. Lives depend on us. His words echoed louder in the quiet than had earlier. Lieutenant Miller entered then, quiet, observant. He didn't say a word at first, just watched the way Sam's hands moved across the rifle too fast, too exact. Then he spoke. Lights out in 10. His eyes stayed on her longer than necessary before he walked away. Sam didn't notice the way he lingered, or maybe she did and didn't let it show. Later her phone buzzed, a number she didn't recognize, 4 words, hang tight, they're watching. She didn't react, didn't move, just stared at the message until the screen went dark. Outside in the shadows, Miller made a call of his own. His voice was low, careful. Sir, I think it's her. The technique is unmistakable. Dawn broke heavy and merciless. PT at 500, 10 miles with 60-pound packs. Marines were already falling behind halfway through, but not her. Sam kept steady pace, face calm, eyes fixed forward. Noticed, of course he noticed. He jogged beside her, his smile sharp. Your route just doubled. Take the North Ridge and circle back. Jason spoke up before he could stop himself. Sergeant, that's not. Did I ask for your input? Reed barked. Drop and give me 50. Jason dropped. Sam's eyes met his, a tiny shake of her head. Don't fight my battles. Then she turned and took the ridge without a word. Steeper, longer, harder, but she climbed it with the same silent precision she carried everywhere. By the time she rejoined the group, sweat streaked her face, dust caked her boots. But her breathing, controlled, calculated, she'd endured worse, much worse. That afternoon, the recruits moved to the firing range. Mirage heat waves shimmered against the targets, turning the air into something cruel. Perfect conditions for snipers. 500 yards, Miller instructed. 3 shots, 3 hits, go. Recruits cycled through one by one. Some hit, some missed, most wavered. When it was Sam's turn, accidentally kicked sand over her scope as he walked past. Oops, wind's tricky today, he smirked. Sam didn't even look at him. She just brushed the glass clear, settled in, and exhaled. The first shot rang out, center mass. The second, same. The third, bullseye. No hesitation, no wasted movement, just machine-like precision. Miller wrote something in his notebook, then caught himself, stopped, looked away. That night in the armory again, Sam cleaned her rifle. Only this time her movements weren't regulation. They were something else, faster, sharper, a rhythm too refined to have been learned here. A flash in her memory, mountains, her father's voice. Breathe with the earth, Sammy. Feel its rhythm before you disturb it. The door opened. Instantly, her hand switched to regulation form. Colonel Parker stood in the doorway. His presence filled the room like gravity. His chest bore rows of ribbons from wars most people only read about. Sam shot to her feet. Sir. He studied her in silence for a long moment. Too long. Then, I'll be overseeing the final phase of your training. Carry on. And he left. Her hands trembled once, only once, because in his eyes she'd seen something she couldn't afford, recognition. And recognition was dangerous. Why did Colonel Parker's gaze linger on her longer than the others? Sam woke before dawn, the barracks silent except for the faint rustle of restless recruits shifting in their bunks. She had already been up an hour, running through her own PT before the day's grind began. Her body moved on autopilot push-ups, core holds, every repetition not just for strength, but to burn away the doubts clawing at the edges of her mind. Doubts were dangerous. If you let them in, they grew. By the time the rest of the squad stumbled awake, Sam was already lacing her boots, calm, collected. Sergeant caught her in the hallway, clipboard in hand, eyes narrowed. Trying to impress someone, his voice dripped with mockery. No, Sergeant, she replied evenly, just maintaining standards. He smirked, but it never reached his eyes. Today's standards are going to break you. The morning run was brutal by design. 10 miles with 60-pound packs under the punishing Nevada sun. The trail snaked across ridges and valleys, steep climbs meant to bleed every ounce of strength. Halfway through, 3 recruits had already dropped out, gasping for air on the side of the trail. Sam kept her rhythm steady, pace even, her breathing controlled like she was counting it. Left foot. Inhale, right foot. Exhale. Noticed. He barked, jogging up beside her. Your route just doubled, North Ridge, circle back. She didn't blink, didn't argue, just adjusted her course and began the climb. Behind her, Jason Reed protested but silenced him with punishment push-ups. Sam caught Jason's eye as she turned toward the ridge. Her look said everything. Don't interfere. Don't waste yourself on me. The North Ridge was steeper, harsher, rocks tearing into boots. sun hammering down with merciless weight. Her muscles screamed, but her mind quieted. She knew this kind of climb. She'd done worse in places where a misstep meant more than a stumble, it meant death. By the time she returned to the main trail, her uniform was soaked, sweat dripping down her temples. But her breathing, still controlled, still steady. Smug grin faltered for the briefest second before he barked another order. By afternoon, the recruits were herded to the firing range. The air shimmered with heat, mirages dancing on the horizon. Targets bent and wavered like ghosts in the distance. Perfect sniper conditions. 500 yards, 3 shots, Lieutenant Miller instructed. Make them count. One by one, the recruits stepped forward. Some hit, some missed. A few barely grazed the target. Every shot carried the weight of judgment, the instructor's cold eyes recording every twitch of hesitation. When Sam's turn came, Tanner strolled past her position and deliberately kicked sand across her scope. "Oops, wind's tricky today," he said with a smirk. Her expression didn't change. She brushed the grit off the lens, settled her body into position, and exhaled slowly. The first shot cracked, dead center. The second followed, just as precise. The third, bullseye. No pause, no wasted movement. Her breathing stayed in rhythm, her hands steady. Silence lingered for a beat. Miller scribbled something in his notebook, his jaw tightening as if he'd seen too much. Then, almost reluctantly, he snapped it shut. That evening when the barracks quieted, Sam slipped to the armory again. Alone, or so she thought. Her hands worked through the rifle disassembly faster than regulation. Each motion was something older, practiced, efficient in a way that came only from repetition under pressure. She wasn't just cleaning, she was remembering. A flash in her mind, mountains at 14, her father's steady voice guiding her hands. Breathe with the earth, Sammy. Feel its rhythm before you disturb it. The door creaked. Instantly, her motion slowed into regulation form, the mechanical pace of a textbook Marine. At ease, the voice was deep, controlled. Colonel James Parker stepped inside. His presence filled the room effortlessly, ribbons across his chest telling a story of battles fought long before she'd been old enough to understand them. "Sir," she rose immediately, posture straight. Parker's eyes studied her, not the weapon, silent, searching, long enough to make her skin prickle. Then finally, "I'll be overseeing the final phase of your training." Her jaw tightened, but she gave no response. "Carry on," he left without another word. When the door shut, her hands trembled once, just once, because in his gaze she had seen it again, recognition. And recognition could ruin everything. The following morning, Parker was there again, standing beside the instructors during drills. His eyes moved from recruit to recruit, dissecting every movement. When they landed on her, they stayed too long. During a team exercise, Sam instinctively shifted into the sniper's role, a position no one had assigned her. "Who told you that was your role?" snapped. Before she could answer, stepped forward. "I'll take sniper position, Sergeant." Gave a dismissive nod, sending up the ridge while Sam was shoved back into the line. But when the moment came, hesitated, wind shifted, elevation calculations slipped, the shot missed. Target compromised, barked, the exercise ended. Sam stayed silent, but when she glanced toward the observation post, Parker's eyes were on her. And for the briefest second, the corner of his mouth twitched, not a smile exactly, but something close. Later cornered her by the mess hall, waving papers in her face. "Who the hell are you really? Your service record is thinner than tissue. Assignments redacted. PT scores barely scraping the minimum. Then suddenly you're here. What game are you playing?" Her face remained unreadable. "I qualified for this program like everyone else." Hissed, his voice sharp. "There's something off about you, and I'm going to find out what it is." Across the yard, Lieutenant Miller watched. His expression was calm, but his eyes were calculating. He leaned toward Colonel Parker, murmuring low, How long have you known? The way she handles her weapon, Miller answered himself. I've only seen that technique once before. Parker's reply was barely audible. Keep watching, say nothing. The desert survival exercise came next, 48 hours with minimal supplies scattered across the Nevada backcountry. No help, no shortcuts. Evade patrols, reach extraction, survive. Sam moved like a ghost through the rocky terrain. Her steps left almost no trace, where others' boots gouged clear prints in the dust. Jason spotted her crossing a dry creek bed. How are you doing that? He whispered. Distributing weight differently, she murmured. Old hunter's trick. But it wasn't just her movements. When she built an observation post, her camouflage blended seamlessly into the scrub, techniques not in any marine handbook. Miller stumbled upon it during inspection later, his eyes narrowing. Where'd you learn that method? Figured it out myself, sir. His stare lingered. Interesting. Looks remarkably similar to techniques used by Force Recon in Helmand. Sam didn't flinch. Great minds think alike, sir. His eyes narrowed again, but he said nothing. That afternoon brought timed shooting drills, sun at its worst, heat warping the air, targets set at variable distances. Shooters ready, called. Each recruit struggled. The shifting wind made precision nearly impossible. When Sam stepped up, she adjusted her stance subtly, more compact, cheek pressed differently, breathing pattern strange, not marine protocol. 3 shots, 3 bullseyes, flawless. Lucky, muttered under his breath. Smirked but eyes sharpened, he stepped closer. That's not the breathing technique we teach here. Explain yourself. Experimental approach, sir, she said calmly. Helps me stabilize in high wind. Did I authorize experimentation in my program? His voice was quiet, dangerous. No, sir. 20 push-ups, now. She without hesitation. Dust smeared across her palms, arms burning, but her eyes never left the horizon. From the command tent, Parker held a satellite phone to his ear. Yes, General, I'm certain it's her. No, sir, they have no idea who they're dealing with. Why did the darkness feel easier to her than the light? At 2300 hours, the recruits were lined up for the night navigation exercise. No night vision, no glow sticks, just stars, memory, and instinct to guide them across 2 miles of treacherous desert. Most stumbled almost immediately. A root snagged one boot, a loose rock sent another recruit sprawling. The darkness was merciless to them, but to her it felt different. Sam moved as if the blackness didn't touch her. Each step calculated, each obstacle anticipated before it even came into view. She flowed across the terrain like water finding its path downhill. Where others strained, she simply moved. By the time she reached the checkpoint, Captain was already there, stopwatch in hand. 17 minutes, his voice was a low growl. That's unexpected. Good night vision, sir. Most took 30 minutes, sometimes longer. She didn't flinch under his stare, didn't let the silence stretch long enough for him to think she was gloating. Leaned in close to, whispering something she couldn't catch. Their eyes both cut toward her, suspicion sharp as blades. The exercise continued. Teams advanced using hand signals. But Sam weren't the ones they'd been taught. These were different, more efficient, recognizable only to those who had served in places where silence kept men alive. From the observation post, Parker watched through night vision goggles, and for the first time he allowed himself a smile. The next morning, Tanner shoved a folder into her chest. His eyes were feverish with obsession. Who the hell are you really? Your record is sanitized, redacted. Nobody gets into Scout Sniper School with a file like yours, not unless someone's hiding something. Her face didn't change. Be careful, Tanner. Be careful. His laugh was sharp, bitter. You've been playing us. I don't know what game this is, but I'll find the truth. She stepped closer so close his breath caught. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Try it, see what happens. For the first time saw something flicker in her eyes. Not fear, not anger, something colder, dangerous. A shadow of a past he couldn't name. His body betrayed him a single step backward before he realized what he'd done. That evening brought the simulation exercise. Recruits divided into teams. One side red, one side blue. Sam's team was saddled with the worst assignments, courtesy of Tanner Point Man, read comms, paused deliberately, his smirk lingering. Ammo carrier. Yes, Sergeant. No protest, no hesitation. She took the role without a flicker of emotion. 20 minutes into the exercise, their designated sniper struggled. Wind gusts shifted violently, knocking his rounds wide. Can't compensate, muttered, frustration cutting his voice. Sam's eyes scanned the terrain once. 22-mile-per-hour gusts southwest, adjust 2 minutes right, hold 1 mil high. Blink to what? Do it. He hesitated, then adjusted as she said. Fired. The target cracked with a perfect hit. His mouth fell open. Holy. Focus, Sam cut him off, voice low. Word spread before nightfall. Recruits whispered about impossible calculation, the way she read the wind like it was printed in the air. By evening inspection had already heard enough. So think she's a wind whisperer now, he sneered. Sam stood at attention, unblinking. Think you know better than instructors with combat deployments? No, Sergeant, but last I checked, battlefield calculations come from experience, not textbooks. Her words landed harder than a slap, stepped closer, nose inches from hers. What combat deployments are you hiding in that sanitized record? The room went silent. No one dared breathe. None I'm authorized to discuss, Sergeant. The dangerous smile that spread across his face wasn't humor. It was blood in the water. Maybe she's secretly a SEAL, jeered, loud enough for the barracks to hear. Or Delta Force. What do you think, recruits? The mystery woman. Jason shifted uneasily. Then, against better judgment, he spoke. With respect, Sergeant outperforms most of us. Did I ask for your opinion, Reed? Bark cut through the tension. Drop and give me 50. As Jason hit the floor, turned back to her. Your boyfriend can't save you. Nobody can. 3 more weeks, then the final test will send you packing. Sam didn't flinch, but inside the words weren't a threat. They were a clock ticking closer to something she could no longer avoid. Hours later, when the base lay quiet, Lieutenant Miller found her outside in the dark, practicing. She wasn't just breathing. She was controlling the rhythm of her body in ways he hadn't seen since Afghanistan. He said quietly, a word. She froze, then slowly shifted her breath back to regulation. I've seen that before, Miller continued. 8 years ago, Operation Kingfisher. My unit was pinned down. Enemy snipers had us trapped. Then someone started taking them out, one by one. Shots from distances that shouldn't have been possible. Sam's face didn't change. We never saw our guardian angel, but we heard rumors. A team, special operations, someone who made impossible shots. Her voice was calm. Sounds like you were lucky, sir. He studied her face, searching for cracks. The shooter used the same breathing technique you were just practicing. She met his gaze evenly. Many techniques out there, sir. A long silence stretched between them. Finally, he nodded once. So there are, just watch your 6. The next morning began the endurance test. 72 hours without sleep, forced to maintain operational effectiveness. Perfect shot groupings required, even as hallucinations crept in like ghosts. By hour 40, half the recruits had fallen apart. Sam remained eerily consistent. Her body moved like a machine, her eyes steady even when others staggered. She's using micro-sleep techniques, Miller muttered in the observation post. Parker nodded, 3 to 5 seconds at a time, resting the brain without losing awareness. Classic special operations training. Miller's jaw tightened. Who is she really, sir? Above your clearance, Lieutenant. By hour 60, the test claimed almost everyone. Slurred words, shaky hands, missed shots, but Sam, her group stayed tight, her rhythm unbroken. Then it detonated near her position during night fire. Most recruits flinched, blinded, disoriented. Sam didn't. She dropped instantly into a protective stance, rifle snapping into position with a fluidity that didn't belong to a recruit. It was close-quarters combat drilled into her bones. Saw it too. Did you see that? Whispered, all tangled with suspicion. That's Tier 1 operator movement, hissed. No regular Marine moves like that. By dawn, the survivors looked like zombies. Eyes red, hands trembling, voices broken. But she stood straight, alert. 72 hours, barked, scanning the wreckage of his recruits. Closest we can simulate combat stress. Most of you failed. His gaze locked on her. Some of you performed unexpectedly well. Watched from the back, suspicion boiling into obsession. He didn't just want to expose her anymore. He needed to. 1 week remained before the final test. And Sam knew, no matter how well she hid, the shadows of her past were closing in. Why did the worn rifle in her hands feel more like a setup than a weapon? The week before the final test buzzed with tension. For most recruits, it was about proving themselves, their future careers balanced on one shot. For Sam, it was something else entirely, something far more dangerous. At dawn, Captain assembled the recruits in formation. His voice carried across the range, clipped and cold. Today, you draw your test equipment, maintain it, zero it, know it better than you know yourselves. No excuses, no second chances. One by one, the recruits were handed their rifles. Clean, balanced, maintained. When Sam's turn came, Sergeant smirked as he passed her an older. The stock was scratched, the barrel worn, the scope mount crooked. Problem? His smile widened when she inspected it. No, Sergeant. Her hands moved across the weapon, fingers finding flaws most recruits wouldn't recognize. Subtle signs of tampering. Microscopic scratches on the firing pin. A scope mount loosened just enough to drift under recoil. His grin said everything. Later in the armory, Jason Reed approached cautiously as she worked. They gave you the worst one, didn't they? Sam didn't look up. It'll shoot true when I'm finished with it. I overheard in Tanner, Jason whispered. They did something to your rifle. I know. Jason's eyes widened. And you're not going to report it. She smiled faintly. That would be the expected response. Jason stared at her like she was speaking another language. Who are you really, Sam? Before she could answer, the door opened. Captain's silhouette filled the frame. Reed, don't you have your own equipment to maintain? Yes, sir. Jason retreated quickly. Lingered, watching her hands dismantle the with speed no recruit should possess. Having trouble with your rifle. Nothing I can't handle, sir. His eyes narrowed. Final test in 6 days. No excuses for equipment failure, understood. Yes, sir. When he left, she continued working. Her hands moved with unconscious precision, like she had stripped rifles under red lights in combat zones, where seconds meant survival. The next day, Tanner watched her through binoculars from the observation platform. She found the modifications, he muttered. She shouldn't be grouping that tight at 800 yards with that rifle. Grabbed the binoculars, swore under his breath. Her shots were landing dead center than anything himself had managed. Lieutenant Miller stepped up beside them silently. Problem. No, sir, snapped. Miller's gaze lingered on Sam. Seems to be performing well with that older, too well. That afternoon, Sam sat alone under a concrete barrier, eyes closed. But she wasn't resting. She was remembering. A dusty outpost in Afghanistan. Her spotter's voice calling wind shifts. The crack of her rifle. Marines pinned down, their lives hanging on the rhythm of her breath. Comfortable killer. The voice snapped her eyes open. Colonel Parker stood over her, his gaze unreadable. "Sir," she rose immediately. "Captain tells me you've had some equipment issues." "Nothing significant, sir." His eyes shifted toward the firing range, wherein spoke in low tones. "Some people don't appreciate being surprised." Sam stayed silent. Parker's voice softened. "Just remember why you're here." Then he turned and left. That night she worked late again in the armory. The door opened behind her and "Sergeant has something to tell you," said, his jaw tight. His voice was flat. "Your test rifle was tampered with. The issue has been addressed. Those responsible will be disciplined." Sam's face didn't change. "Thank you for informing me, Sergeant." After they left, a rare smile ghosted her lips, because the moment she'd been waiting for had come. The trap had been baited, and they'd taken it. Outside, cornered. "If I catch you sabotaging equipment again, I'll take your stripes. We don't play games with Marines' lives." "Sir, she's not who she says she is," hissed. "Her record is sanitized, her skills." "I don't care if she's the goddamn tooth fairy. We don't sabotage Marines in my program." Unseen, Miller listened from the shadows. When they left, he pulled out his phone. "Colonel, Phase 1 complete. They took the bait exactly as predicted." The following morning, Parker announced that high-ranking officers would be observing the final test. Generals, intelligence brass, men who never wasted time on training exercises. Jason whispered to her at breakfast, "This isn't normal. Generals don't just show up." Sam sipped her coffee. "Maybe they're bored." Watched them from across the hall, suspicion tightening his jaw. Later, during drills, Sam field-stripped her rifle with blinding speed. Under 25 seconds, recruits stopped to watch. "Where'd you learn to do that?" one asked. Before she could answer, his voice cut in. "My office now." Inside, he closed the door. His voice was lower, more cautious. "I know what did to your rifle. It's been handled." "Thank you, sir." "You knew, didn't you? You found the modifications immediately. Most recruits wouldn't have. Wouldn't know how to fix them without documentation." Sam stood at attention, neither confirming nor denying. "Who are you really?" asked softly. "Just a Marine trying to qualify, sir." 3 days until the final test," he said finally. "Whatever game you're playing, it ends there." That night she returned to her barracks to find her footlocker had been searched. Nothing missing except one thing: a photograph, worn, hidden deep in her manual, a photo of her younger self in another uniform, standing with a blurred-out team. Someone had taken it. The next morning she tracked footprints from her barracks to the men's. Tracking was standard training, but what she displayed went beyond standard. Stride length, displacement, pressure points invisible to anyone else. The trail ended at Tanner's bunk. She found him alone, preparing gear. "My photograph," she said calmly. "You took it." Spun, startled. "What? No, I." "You searched my footlocker." She stepped closer. "Why?" "I was looking for evidence," he admitted, face flushed. "But I didn't find anything, except your manual, no photo." Her eyes narrowed, studying him the way an interrogator studies a prisoner. Cold, assessing, calculating truth from lies. "If you're lying." "I'm not. But maybe you want to explain how someone with barely passing PT scores disassembles like a force recon operator, or moves across night terrain without NVGs, or calculates wind like a veteran sniper. Some people learn faster than others." "Was right, you're not who you claim to be." She leaned in, her whisper sharp enough to cut. "Be careful, Tanner. This is bigger than your ego or your family's legacy." For the first time, saw something that made him step back. The look of someone who had pulled the trigger when it mattered, when lives hung in the balance. "Who are you?" he whispered. She turned to leave. "If you didn't take my photo, someone else did." And that unsettled her more than his suspicions. 2 days before the test, black SUVs rolled through gates. Men with insignia most recruits didn't recognize stepped out. Military police set up a perimeter. Instructors muttered, recruits whispered. This wasn't training anymore. It was something else. And Sam knew the time for hiding was running out. Why did the air on the range feel heavier than combat? 2 days before the final test transformed. Convoys rolled in, SUVs lined with tinted windows. Brass moved across the grounds like vultures circling something unseen. Recruits felt it. Their jokes were quieter. Their laughter thinned into nervous whispers. Sam walked among them as if nothing had changed. But inside, the weight pressed heavier with each passing hour. This wasn't just a test anymore. Someone, somewhere, had turned it into theater, and she was the show. At breakfast, Jason leaned close, his voice low. Those aren't training observers, Sam. Those are spooks. CIA, maybe DIA. Why would they be here for a sniper qualification? She didn't answer, didn't need to. His eyes searched hers, desperate for clarity. "You're not just a recruit, are you?" he whispered. Her spoon clicked softly against her tray. "Eat your eggs, Jason." Across the mess hall, Tanner watched. Not with suspicion anymore, but with something darker. Obsession. He wasn't just curious. He needed to expose her. Needed to prove that his family's legacy wasn't being overshadowed by the one Marine nobody trusted. That afternoon, Colonel Parker gathered the recruits on the firing line. His voice cut through the desert wind, firm and sharp. "The final test will be observed. Distance, 3,100 meters. Conditions, unpredictable. You have one shot to prove you belong. Fail and you're done. Forever." A murmur swept the recruits. 3,100 meters wasn't just distance. It was nearly mythical. The longest recorded kills in history hovered there, and now they were expected to replicate it under scrutiny. Sam's face betrayed nothing, but her chest rose slower, steadier, as if she was already controlling her breath for a shot that hadn't yet come. After dismissal, confronted her outside the armory. "You already know you'll hit it, don't you?" She didn't stop walking. He grabbed her arm. For a split second, her body reacted, hands snapping toward his wrist in a reflex that wasn't Marine Corps standard. Something faster, more lethal. She stopped herself just short of breaking him. Froze, he'd seen it, felt it. A movement drilled not into recruits but into operators. His face paled. "You've done this before," he whispered. She met his eyes, her voice a blade. "Stop digging before you find something you can't handle." He let her go, but not out of respect, out of fear. That night she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Around her, recruits snored, shifted, murmured in restless dreams. But her mind was back in the mountains again. Her father's voice. The weight of a rifle longer than she was tall. The breath before the shot. The silence after. A memory surfaced she hadn't allowed in years, the look on a target's face through a scope. Not enemy. Not friend, just human, a man who never saw her, a life she had taken before she was old enough to understand what it meant. The guilt pressed harder than the heat of Nevada ever could. But weakness wasn't allowed here. At dawn, she was already outside, running the ridge before PT. Jason caught her at the water point. "Why do you push harder than the rest of us?" he asked, panting. "Because I don't get second chances." He frowned. "None of us do." She met his gaze. For the first time, he saw something in her eyes that wasn't steel. It was sorrow. Later, the recruits drilled at long-range targets. Sam's group stayed impossibly tight, each shot stacked on the last. Miller watched from the tower, arms crossed, stood beside him. "She shouldn't be able to do that," muttered. Miller's jaw flexed. "She isn't doing Marine Corps shooting. Look at her cheek weld. Look at her breathing. That's special operations training." "And you're letting it slide?" asked. Miller's answer was measured. Orders. Parker arrived then, his presence quiet but commanding. "How's she doing?" "Too well," replied. Parker's eyes tracked her through the scope. "She'll do it, I have no doubt." Then why are we even running the test? Asked. Because this isn't about proving she can hit the shot, Parker said softly. It's about proving who she really is. That evening, Jason found her again. They're setting you up, he warned. This isn't just about qualification. They want something from you. She didn't answer. Sam, talk to me, please. Who are you really? Her voice was almost a whisper. Someone who's already failed too many times. He stared, stunned into silence. Later, she found her missing photograph slipped back under her pillow. She froze, heart hammering. Whoever had taken it had been inside her barracks again, watching, testing her. When she turned it over, there was something new written on the back. 4 words scrawled in a hand she didn't recognize. They know it's you. Her blood chilled. The day before the test, Parker called her into his office, alone. He stood behind his desk, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Sit. She did. I've watched you closely, he began. The way you move, the way you shoot, the way you breathe. You're not a recruit, you're something else. Her jaw tightened. With respect, sir. Don't insult me, he cut her off. I've commanded men in places most Marines can't even find on a map. I know the difference between raw talent and forged skill. You've been forged. Question is, where? She stayed silent. Parker leaned closer, his voice low. You've been hiding, but they're not here for the other recruits. They're here for you. Tomorrow, when you pull that trigger, they'll decide what happens next. And trust me, they already know more than you think. Her chest felt tight, but she gave no reaction. Dismissed. Outside, the desert stretched endless, the horizon painted with dying light. She stood alone, the weight of the truth pressing down. Tomorrow wasn't just a test, it was exposure. That night she cleaned her rifle one last time, every motion steady, every part placed with care. She whispered under her breath words no one else could hear. Not prayer, not fear, a promise. Make it count. Because tomorrow, when she lay behind that scope, it wouldn't just be about distance, or skill, or even proving she belonged. It would be about surviving what came after. Why did silence feel louder than gunfire? The morning of the final test dawned sharp and windless, the desert sky washed pale with the first light. Recruits filed onto the range with weapons slung tight, nerves stiff in their shoulders. But Sam walked as if she'd done this before because she had. 3,100 meters, a distance that lived in military folklore. Some said it was luck, others skill. All knew it was nearly impossible. And now, with brass and spooks watching, it was their crucible. Colonel Parker stood before them, hands clasped behind his back. His voice was steady, carrying the authority of someone who had seen too much. You've all come far, but today distance will decide your future. Hit and you move forward, miss and you're done, simple as that. The recruits shifted uneasily. None of them thought it was simple. Sam's rifle sat across her knees, polished, rebuilt, balanced with every ounce of patience she had left. The same weapon had sabotaged, the same one she'd resurrected from its flaws. Her fingers rested on the worn stock like it was an old friend. From the observation tower muttered, "They'll never hit it, not one of them." Miller's eyes stayed on Sam. One might. Smirked, "If pulls it off, I'll eat my stripes." Careful, Miller said quietly. The test began. One by one, recruits stepped up, prone behind their rifles, scopes pressed against strained eyes. Shots cracked across the desert, echoing into the empty horizon. Most rounds fell short, some drifted wide. A few struck near the steel plate but failed to connect. The distance punished them. Wind punished them. Pressure punished them. Then it was her turn. Sam slid forward onto the mat, body folding into the rifle with fluid precision. The world narrowed to scope and breath. Heat shimmer blurred the steel plate in the distance, a ghost floating on the horizon. She closed her eyes, felt the earth under her body, the pulse in her fingertips, the faint drag of wind across her cheek. A whisper in her memory, her father's voice. Don't fight the distance, Sammy. Let it come to you. Breathe with it. Become smaller than it. Invisible. Her chest rose, fell. She opened her eyes, crosshairs steady. The world held its breath. She squeezed. The thundered recoil kicking against her shoulder. Time slowed, stretched thin as glass. The round arced into the distance, carried on the invisible hands of air and mathematics and instinct. Then a faint metallic ping. Direct hit. Silence swallowed the range. Then shouts, applause. A wave of disbelief rippled across recruits and instructors alike. Tanner's jaw fell open, cursed under his breath, color draining from his face. Jason Reed let out a laugh that cracked with relief. From the tower, exhaled like he'd been holding his lungs hostage. Impossible. Miller's voice was low, reverent. No, that was. Parker didn't move, didn't clap, didn't smile. His eyes stayed locked on her, unreadable. Sam rose slowly, chambered another round, and set the rifle down with care. Her face was calm, almost detached, but her hands trembled just enough for her to notice. Not from nerves, from memory. Because it wasn't the first time she'd hit a target at that distance. It was the first time she wished she hadn't. As the test ended, recruits clustered, buzzing with disbelief. Some congratulated her. Others stared like she was a ghost among them. Pushed through the crowd, his voice sharp. That wasn't luck. That wasn't training. Who are you? No one does that on their first try. She met his gaze, voice flat. Someone who didn't miss. Jason stepped between them, protective. Back off, Tanner. She made the shot and you didn't. End of story. But it wasn't the end, not even close. That evening, as the sun sank behind the ridges, Sam was summoned to the command tent. Inside, Parker waited. Alongside him sat two men in suits. No insignia, no introductions. Their presence said everything. Sit, Parker ordered. She did. One of the suits leaned forward. His voice was calm, precise. That shot wasn't a test. It was confirmation. We know who you are. Her jaw tightened. The second man slid the worn photograph across the table, the one taken from her locker, the one she'd hidden for years. This is you, he said. Not a recruit, not a student, an operator attached to Task Force 8 Echo, Afghanistan, Iraq, classified operations across theaters. We've known since the day you stepped onto this base. Her eyes stayed locked on the photograph. Her voice was steady but soft. Then why the charade? Parker answered, because they needed proof. You've been buried too deep, redacted, erased. Some didn't believe you were real. And now, she asked quietly. The first man's lips curled faintly. Now they want you back. Her chest felt like stone. I didn't come here for them. I came here to disappear. The second man's tone hardened. Disappear? After what you've done, after what you've taken. Marines don't disappear. They're used until there's nothing left. Silence fell heavy. Parker's eyes softened just enough to betray something human. This isn't about the Corps anymore. This is about who you are, and you can't outrun that. Sam rose slowly. Then maybe I don't belong here at all. When she left the tent, the desert night swallowed her whole. Stars burned overhead, cold and endless. Jason caught up with her near the barracks, breathless. Sam, what happened in there? She shook her head. You don't want to know. Don't shut me out, not now. His voice cracked. I've watched you carry more weight than anyone here, and I don't even know your real name. Her chest tightened. For a moment she wanted to tell him, to unburden, but truth was a luxury she couldn't afford. Instead, she whispered, all you need to know is I'm not who you think I am, and I never was. He reached for her arm, but she stepped back, vanishing into the shadows before he could speak again. That night sleep didn't come. She sat alone on the ridge, rifle across her knees, staring into the dark. Every victory carried ghosts. Every shot pulled a thread she couldn't cut loose. And tomorrow, she knew, the price of that perfect shot would come due. Why did the applause feel more like a death sentence than a victory? The day after her impossible shot wasn't the same. Recruits still buzzed, whispering her name like it belonged in legend. Instructors avoided her eyes, unsettled by what they'd witnessed. Even the desert wind seemed to carry her reputation across the range. But Sam walked through it all with a hollow calm. The cheers didn't matter, the shot didn't matter, because she knew what came after. By evening, Jason found her near the motor pool, sitting on a crate, rifle across her knees. "You should be proud," he said softly. "What you did yesterday, no one ever seen anything like it." She didn't look at him. Pride gets people killed. His brow furrowed. "Sam, what's really going on? Those suits, Parker, they're circling you like you're a prize. Why?" Her silence said more than words could. Jason crouched in front of her, searching her eyes. "You don't have to tell me everything. Just tell me you trust me." Her throat tightened. She wanted to. God, she wanted to. But trust was something she'd buried long ago in a valley halfway across the world where silence was the only friend she had left. Instead, she whispered, "Don't get close to me. It won't end well." Jason's face hardened. He wanted to argue, but footsteps broke the moment. Tanner, smug as ever, leaning against a Humvee. "Well, well, the ghost sniper graces us with her presence." His voice dripped with venom. "Word is, you're not who you say you are. Special operations, huh? That why your file looks like it's been through a shredder?" Sam rose slowly, eyes steady. "Careful, Tanner." He stepped closer, emboldened. "What's the matter? Scared someone might finally expose you? You think one lucky shot makes you untouchable? You're a fraud, always were." Jason bristled. "Back off, Tanner." "Sneer, defending your mystery girlfriend. Cute." Sam didn't move, didn't flinch. She just let the silence stretch, cold and sharp, until finally muttered something under his breath and stalked away. Jason turned to her. "Why let him push you? Why not shut him down?" Her voice was quiet, almost fragile. "Because the truth would destroy him, and I don't need more blood on my hands." That night the barracks were restless. Recruits whispered long after lights out. Some idolized her, others feared her, and one obsessed over her. In the dark, he opened his notebook. Inside were sketches of her stance, notes on her movements, calculations of her shots. He wasn't just suspicious anymore. He was building a case. The next morning, drills ran as usual, but the air was different. The instructors barked less. The recruits worked harder. Everyone was waiting for what would happen next. Parker gathered them in the briefing hall. His voice was calm, but the weight of it pressed down like a storm. "Congratulations on completing your final test, but not all of you will continue. Some of you don't have what it takes. That's the reality." His gaze swept the room before settling too long on her. Then came the announcement. "Two names remain. Tanner, you'll face the final evaluation. Tomorrow, one last mission simulation, performance under pressure, teamwork, precision." Smirked, his chance had come. Jason muttered under his breath, "They're setting you up." That evening, Sam sat alone in the armory, cleaning her rifle. The door creaked open. Lieutenant Miller stepped inside. He didn't speak at first, just watched her hands, the way they moved with unconscious mastery. Then he said quietly, "I know who you are." Her chest tightened, but she kept working. "Do you?" "Task Force 8, he continued. "You saved my unit once. Afghanistan, you never showed your face, but I remember the way the shots came. Clean, precise. No wasted movement. Yesterday, I saw it again." Her hand stilled. "You're a ghost," he said. "The kind they bury in classified files. The kind the Corps pretends doesn't exist." Her voice was low. "And if you know that, you also know why I don't belong here." Miller stepped closer. "Maybe. Or maybe this is exactly where you belong. Recruits need to see what resilience looks like. Marines need proof that legends bleed like the rest of us." She finally met his eyes. "I'm not a role model, Lieutenant. I'm a mistake they keep using." He studied her for a long moment. Then maybe it's time you stop being used. Before she could respond, the door opened again. Colonel Parker. His eyes cut between them sharp. With me. She followed him into the night. They walked in silence until they reached the ridge, the desert stretching endless under the stars. Parker finally spoke. You think you're here by accident. His tone wasn't angry. It was tired, heavy. You were placed here, every whisper, every doubt, every obstacle, all of it designed to see if you'd break cover, to see if you were still the same ghost they built years ago. Her jaw clenched. And if I am? Then tomorrow's evaluation isn't just about you. It's about what happens next, to you, to all of us. She stared at the horizon. I didn't come back for them. Parker's voice softened. Maybe not, but sometimes fate doesn't care why you return, only that you do. The silence between them felt endless. Finally, he turned away. Get some rest, tomorrow decides everything. But rest didn't come. She lay awake, staring at the barracks ceiling, listening to the restless breaths around her. Jason, shifting in his bunk, scribbling in his notebook, snoring faintly in the instructor's quarters. Her mind drifted back to the shot. The ping of steel at 3,100 meters, the silence after, and the knowledge that she had just painted a target on her back bigger than any she'd ever aimed at. Because legends weren't celebrated, they were hunted. By dawn, she knew one truth. Tomorrow, when she stepped onto that field with Tanner, it wouldn't just be an evaluation. It would be a reckoning. Why did it feel less like a test and more like an execution? Dawn broke hard and cold over, the desert air sharp with anticipation. The recruits who had already washed out stood silent at the edges of the range, called back just to witness the final evaluation. Instructors lined the ridges, binoculars ready. Brass and shadows in suits stood apart, whispering among themselves. 2 names, 2 shooters, Sam and Tanner. Grinned like a man already smelling blood. Jason Reed clenched his jaw, fists tight, his eyes locked on her. And Sam walked forward with the same calm rhythm she had carried since the first day she arrived. But inside, her pulse was steady only because she forced it to be. Captain barked the rules. Final scenario, target acquisition, field movement, precision fire. Both recruits will be dropped 2 clicks out. One objective, reach the firing position, neutralize the steel at 1,800 meters extract. First to complete with accuracy and discipline passes. Parker's eyes flicked to her the faintest signal. This wasn't about steel targets. This was about exposure. The convoy dropped them at opposite ends of the desert training ground, smirked at her before stepping off. Better hope those ghosts you carry can shoot for you again. She didn't answer, just adjusted the strap on her rifle and moved. The desert stretched wide and unforgiving. Heat shimmer rose even in early morning, dust hanging in the air. Every step cracked with tension. Sam dropped low, crawling along a wash, rifle snug against her chest. She moved like water, not rushing, not loud, just inevitable. Every ridge was cover. Every shadow was a friend. She heard him before she saw him, crashing heavy through brush 100 meters off. Overconfident, loud, like a man who'd never been hunted. She slowed, letting him pass ahead. This wasn't a race for her. This was survival. Minutes stretched into hours. Sweat stung her eyes, dust coated her tongue, but her breath never broke rhythm. Finally, the firing point, a jagged ridge overlooking the steel plate glinting in the distance, was already there, prone, scope pressed to his eye. Sam settled beside a boulder, sliding into position with quiet efficiency. Fired, the shot cracked, echoed, and missed wide. He cursed, adjusted, fired again. Miss. Sam's eye found her scope, wind at her cheek, mirage rising, distance singing in her blood. Her crosshairs kissed steel. She breathed out, squeezed. Ping! Dead center. The range erupted behind them, shouts, disbelief, applause. Slammed his fist into the dirt. No, no, you're cheating. Nobody does that twice. She rolled onto her back, staring at the endless sky. She felt no triumph, no glory, just that old, hollow ache that never left her. Instructors moved in. Jason broke from formation, sprinting to her. You did it, Sam, you really did it. She gave him a small, tired smile. Yeah, I guess I did. But then the suits arrived, Parker with them. Silence fell over the range like a shroud. One of the men held up a folder. Recruit, or should we say Echo, Task Force 8. The words rippled through the crowd. Recruits glanced at each other in shock. His face went pale. Jason's eyes widened with confusion, betrayal, awe. You were never here to qualify, the man continued. You were here to prove you still exist, and now we've seen enough. Sam sat up slowly. I didn't come here for you, I came here to forget. The second man's tone was cold. Ghosts don't get to forget. Found his voice shrill with anger. I knew it, she's a fraud. She cheated her way through this program, strip her rank, expose her. But Parker stepped forward, silencing him with a look that cut sharper than a blade. She made the shot. You didn't. That's all anyone needs to know. Jason whispered almost to himself, Echo. Her eyes met his, soft with apology. I'm sorry, Jason, for not telling you, for letting you believe I was just like you. He shook his head. You're not, you're more, and maybe that's what scares everyone. Spat on the ground. She's not a Marine, she's a weapon someone forgot to put away. Sam rose slowly, slinging her rifle across her shoulder. Her voice carried quiet steel. Maybe that's true, but even weapons get to choose where they point. The suits exchanged glances. Orders will come soon, one said. Be ready. They left with Parker, the dust of their convoy rising into the sky. The range emptied. Instructors drifted off. Recruits whispered, half in awe, half in fear. Stood alone, humiliated, staring at the dirt like it had betrayed him. Jason stayed. He walked to her side, voice low. What happens now? She looked out at the horizon where the desert met the endless sky. Now, I wait. Maybe they'll use me again. Maybe they'll bury me deeper. Doesn't matter. He shook his head. It matters, you matter. You're more than what they made you. Her chest ached at his words. For the first time in years, she let herself feel it, the longing to be seen as more than a rifle, more than a ghost, more than a legend whispered in classified reports. She touched his shoulder lightly. Take care of yourself, Jason. Don't follow me down this road. His eyes burned, but he nodded. That night she sat alone on the ridge, the stars sharp above her, the desert cold and silent. She held the photograph in her hand, the one they'd stolen, the one they'd returned. Her younger self stared back at her, wide-eyed, innocent, before the ghosts, before the legends, before the silence. She whispered into the night, I see you, I haven't forgotten, I won't. The wind carried her words into the dark. Because in the end it wasn't about records, or medals, or longest shots. It was about survival, about dignity, about the choice to keep moving, even when the world wanted to turn her into a myth she never asked to be. And when the history books stayed silent, when her name was buried in redacted files, she knew the truth. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.